a couple different topics that are not really technically related to each other, but it all kind of goes about the evil of this world and knowing that this, unfortunately, is Satan's world. And hopefully, Jesus is coming back, and we know he is according to Bible prophecy, okay? Revelations tells us that's the case. No man knows the hour or the day, and that he will come as a thief in the night. We know and we're all ready for it, I think, at this point, because it seems like we just keep uncovering more and more evil in this world. And let's start off by talking about the pedo presidents that I put in the title of this thumbnail. I'm over here working. I'm doing pumpkin seeds. I harvested the pumpkins that were outside, and we're gonna try to resell them and just give some out, whatever, and plant for next year. But let's get on to the main topic. And there's this woman that supposedly falsely accused President Trump of raping her when she was 13 years old with the help of Jeffrey Epstein, and now it's blowing up all over social media. I don't have a name for this woman. I don't know if this is the woman who purported to be Katie. What was her last name? I put it out on the channel a couple months ago. Katie something or other. And I don't know if this is that same woman or not. She was using an alias to protect herself. But we were hearing all kinds of stories and rumors that Trump had civilly settled out of court multiple times for, people he supposedly raped, this, that, and the other. And then I don't know if you guys came across the story by was her Glenna Voldening on Substack, and she talked about Sasha Riley. And Sasha it's a man. It's spelled Sascha, Sasha. And he is an Army veteran. He's older than me. Even I'm 42. I think he's getting pretty close to 50. And he came out and said in her interview that was posted on Substack, Glenda Voldening, Sasha Riley came out and said that President Trump raped him as many as 3 different times when he was a teenager. And he theorized about roughly the same age, about 12, 13. And then on the third time, this is a warning because it's going to be kind of graphic on this one here, is that he, it wasn't a friend. They supposedly at this party, if you want to call it a party, I think it was out in Utah. I'm pretty sure that's where he said this happened. And a lot of the elites or whatever got to meeting, and Trump was there. They had shot and murdered this one girl, and I thought he said it was a black girl about the age of 13. So he said, well, I'm probably going to have this happen to me next. And he looked for a weapon. So Trump was laying there naked, according to Sasha Riley, and backside up in the air, wanting this guy to have sex with him, apparently. And he says this was as many as the third time, about the age of 12 to 13. And he looked for a weapon because he believed they were going to kill him. And he spied this wooden tent stake that was just propped up along the wall, he said. And Trump's over here laying down, according to him, and waiting for him to do the business. And he saw that wooden tent stake, so he went over there and grabbed it and put a condom on the tip of it and inserted it into him rectally and took his foot and mashed it down real hard. And he said it opened Trump wide open, and they had to life flight him out of there. Now, I know that's very graphic, and I know you probably weren't prepared to hear that, but this is what Sasha Riley, an Army veteran, came out and said. And when he was in the service in the Army, in his unit, one of his units, his leadership brought him in and questioned him and said, is it true there are adult videos with you in them? Because it looks like it's you. And he said, yeah, I guess there are. It had been many years since he was a teenager, obviously. He didn't know that these things were floating out there on the dark web or wherever back then. This has been many years ago now. And I guess one of his, he was a staff sergeant. Not Sasha Riley. The guy who was over him was a staff sergeant, and he was caught with those videos. And that's how they found that Sasha Riley was in it, because it looked like him. And then they started asking questions, and they brought him in, and they're like, "Is this you?" And he's like, "Yeah, I didn't know that this had made it out there." But he said, "Yeah, there was something that happened when I was 13 years old, and a woman was killed, and, you know, there were several different instances of this going on." So he wasn't exactly sure, like, who was in the video, but he said, yes, this happened, and they recorded me. They were using things as blackmail. I mean, we know that that's what the elites do. We heard about that with Sean Combs one time, doing having somebody doing a sexual encounter, and they would record it and use it as blackmail and stuff. This is what the satanic people do. Now, am I saying Trump is a Satanist or anything like that? I'm not necessarily saying that, no. For you guys who know me on the channel, I have voted for Trump 3 times, 16, 20, and 24. You know, and I certainly, if it was to all happen over today, I would still probably vote for him over the opposition. I mean, we would have been totally done for if it was Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton, my goodness. And you guys know me. I put everything out there that I come across in my research. Whether you believe it or not is totally fine. I'm not saying you have to believe me. I'm just saying this is what I have come over in the years that I have been watching videos. And I've been watching videos for 20 plus years. You know, I'm 42 now. And when Trump was running against Hillary in 2016, back then, you guys remember what happened on the Anthony Weiner laptop. And there were 7, by my memory, 7 grizzled police officers who had been in the force, some of them for 20 plus years. And every single one of them who saw what Hillary Clinton did to this 13-year-old girl, they vomited. Every one of them, from what I remember. And what happened, what was on this video in Anthony Weiner's laptop that they chose to keep so secretive, and they actually killed all 7 New York NYPD officers who saw this video, and they killed them all, was Hillary Clinton surgically used a razor to cut a 13-year-old girl's face off in a satanic occult murder ritual. And the reason she would have done that, most likely, was for adrenochrome. And I know some of you guys are saying, well, you know, this is just a political woman, she might be evil, but what are the odds that this has really happened? Well, let me ask you the question. What are the odds that 7 police officers were all murdered who watched that video on Anthony Weiner's laptop, and they sealed everything? They refused to let it hit courts, they refused to let it go out to the mainstream public, and nobody really talked about it that much back then. It kind of died pretty quick. And it's not just Hillary Rodham Clinton, but also, you know, the title of this video is Pedo Presidents, okay? So I talked about a possibility of Trump maybe doing that with Sasha Riley. And I'll say this, if Sasha Riley's lying about it, that's one hell of a lie to sit there and make up against somebody. And if he is lying about it, then he too should be faced with probably felony charges, honestly. I mean, it's not just slander, that's something a little deeper than that. That's a big lie to make up about somebody. But do I think it's a lie? If you're to ask me, no, I think it's probably true. So, going back on Trump, before I move back in the presidential timeline on this topic real quick, and I'll try not to take up too much of your time, but I have to cover some things to give you guys a basis of understanding. So going back on Trump, Ghislaine Maxwell, and there's a lot of conjecture out there that Ghislaine Maxwell has been replaced with a body double in prison. It's not really her. It certainly does not look like her. Just like the Jim Carrey thing right now. It doesn't look like Ghislaine Maxwell. Totally different person. So she's probably not even in minimum security prison right now. And why should she even be in a minimum security prison out in Texas, Bryan, Texas? Why should she be in a minimum security? We are talking about the worst offenders in human trafficking and sex trafficking ever, and she's the main culprit. Sean Combs is no different. He only got charged for 1 charge. There were only 3 charges levied against him, and the only one he got pinned with by a grand jury was trafficking. That was it. He's guilty of a lot more than that. In my research, I just did a paper on him in school, and he has easily over 1,000 accusers. So you cannot tell me that Sean Combs has only had 1 charge that gets to stick against him, and they bumped his release date out or back to it was initially June 8th of 2028. Now it's April 25th, I do believe, of 2028. Which April 25th is kind of a weird date because locally here for you guys in Parkersburg area, you're following a Greg Casto murder conviction of Cindy D'Lo Ball, and they have just rescheduled his March 10th hearing, which was supposed to be a couple days ago. I believe it's March 12th now, and that's been rescheduled to April 25th and April 28th. No connection at all. It just was in my mind on the date. But that's of this year, 26, not 2028. But let's get back to President Trump. And Elaine Maxwell. President Trump, as you know, owns Mar-a-Lago, that resort in Florida. Well, Elaine Maxwell was actually recruiting for human trafficking, underage, teenage girls at Mar-a-Lago. I don't remember the exact year, but it's happened. It was reported in some media outlets. And the question, and then supposedly Trump found out about it and he put a stop to it and he refused to let her come back in. But let's back the timeline up a little bit. So if you're into human trafficking and you're recruiting teenage girls to do things with guys like Prince Andrew, well, Duke of York at the time, we're talking about Virginia Roberts, who later married and became Virginia Giuffre. But Virginia Roberts at the time as a teenage girl, she was 17 at the time, she was given a sweetheart deal. She said she was given $15,000 if she would go give massages and have sex with Duke of York Andrew out in England. And then also she was to do for him, because the report was that Andrew was very pleased with Virginia Roberts' services, her massage and her sex, and she was reportedly to do that for Jeffrey Epstein and other people. They said, and Elaine Maxwell came and said, "You did a very good job. Andrew was pleased. You're to repeat this again, and we will give you more money." At some point, she obviously got out of it. You have to wonder what's going on in the minds of these teenage girls. You know, I mean, they get all this money thrown at them and all this stuff and fortune and fame. And you saw the same thing with Sean Combs with his accusers. People were coming in. We're talking about boys, teenage boys. You already know about Justin Bieber. Well, there were some boys put up in his hotel with his Bad Boys Productions, talking about Sean Combs, P. Diddy, and they were essentially raped and blackmailed, you know. I mean, how many times? And Sean Combs has settled civilly out of court how many times to keep this stuff hush-hush and swept under the rug? He has had more money than anybody I've known, I've heard of. How does Sean Combs get that much money, man? You know, he created Bad Boys Productions and stuff like this, so you know that the money's coming from some dark and deep places. And then when a judge convinces a grand jury to only charge on one charge, and he's only in for 4 years, minimum security again, out in a New York prison, it's ridiculous. These are the worst offenders in human trafficking that we've ever seen. But we're letting them off very lightly. So let's back the timeline up while we're still on this topic before I shift gears. Let's go back from Trump. Last I heard, there were 76 accusers, maybe. You know, some of them are false. Maybe this one woman that comes out on the thumbnail, I don't know who she is. People aren't saying the name. I don't know if it's that woman or not. Katie Johnson is the name I was thinking of. Katie Johnson. I don't know if that's her or not. So apparently somebody came out and said, yeah, I was all making it up. You know, she's a career criminal and she's on drugs. Well, we don't know her story. We don't know what caused her to go on that stuff. We don't know if she's been threatened, because some people have been threatened. Trump has been longtime friends with Lindsey Graham, and Lindsey Graham is not a good person at all. Sasha Riley, he was asked about Lindsey Graham. And the reason that Glenda Voldening asked Sasha Riley specifically about Lindsey Graham was because they were floating his name out there when Trump was there in Utah and the whole raping encounter took place. Sasha Riley couldn't remember if Lindsey Graham was there. He didn't think that he was. He did testify that there was a senator from Illinois out there, and I don't want to say the name because I'm not sure. I might get it wrong. I'd have to re-listen to that podcast on Substack again. But it is a prominent guy, and he said he was a wrestler and he was very athletic when he was younger. At the time, he would have been 18, raping him at 12 years old, raping Sasha Riley at 12 years old. And it's just really sick. I mean, it's sick what is going on with these elites. You know, you got to understand Trump used to be a Democrat back in the day before he switched to Republican, and he only switched because it gave him a better chance of winning the presidency. Was he the better choice? Well, yeah. I mean, who wants Hillary Clinton and who wants Kamala Harris? But regardless, we'd have been in a big mess. But I'm not here to get into a political diatribe with anybody's beliefs or opinions. I think we should all have our opinions and not jump down each other's throats on any of it. But let's back the timeline up and go back to who was before him, and that was Joe Biden. And you guys already know it's being widespread that it wasn't really the real Joe Biden. It was somebody wearing a prosthetic mask. And you thought those were conspiracy theories at true, but they're now being proven true. You could see the folds on the neck of Joe Biden. The earlobes were connected one day. The next day they weren't. The heights changed. One day he was taller. The next day he was shorter. One day he was senile. The next day he wasn't. One day he would ride bike with an ice cream cone in his hand or something like that. And the next day he couldn't do anything. He had to be pushed around just to even walk to go anywhere. And he couldn't even say things without mumbling over his words. So you know it wasn't the real Joe Biden. It was multiple people posing as him. And a lot of times when he would do his interviews, they'd be done at that Atlanta White House set. There's a fake White House in Atlanta, Georgia. I don't know if you know that or not. And he would do those there frequently. But Joe Biden even raped his own daughter in the shower. And she wrote about it in a diary, a personal diary. Well, they got a hold of that diary. And nobody was allowed to see it. But, you know, you can say it's a conspiracy if you want to. But you already know about how Joe Biden sniffed the hair of little girls and all this stuff. And for years, everybody knew about it. So you've got that going on. Now let's bump back up Barack Hussein Obama. He lied about everything. He lied about his real name. He lied about who he was married to. That was Michael LaVaughn Robinson. A lot of people don't believe that. They still don't believe that. But let me tell you something, okay? Michael LaVaughn Robinson, he said Michael 11 times in his speeches. He said, Michael and I. He kept stumbling and slipping up. Well, who's Michael? Obviously, it's his man wife. But he wasn't born in the United States. He wasn't born in Hawaii. It was a lie. He was born in Kenya. So there's a lot of that going on. And why was this man pushed to run for political office as badly as he was? And when it was brought to court, because I found the sealed documents, you know, they had a court case on this to try him and to prevent him from running for presidency back in, I think it was 2008. There were court documents that said Barack Obama was not born in the United States, and somebody challenged it, and the courts let it happen. So what does that tell you about our justice system? At the highest levels, it's all corroborated. It's all made for the wrong things to happen. And it's all connected. I mean, I've got the name Donny Marshall on the back part of this title, of this thumbnail, and no, Donny Marshall has nothing to do with pedophile presidents. But it's all lumped together when you consider the evil that's going on behind closed doors and at the highest levels. Real quick, before I move on to Donny Marshall and wrap this video up on him, I do want to talk about Bill Clinton. There are several women that allege Bill Clinton raped them. We're not just talking about Monica Lewinsky when he had the affair in the White House on his own wife, Hillary Clinton. You know, there are several. There's a Juanita Bonham, I think is her name. She's one of them, the accusers of Bill Clinton, that said, yeah, he came out and he raped me. So a lot of these cases, it's like Sean Combs, you know, they're settled out of court, civil, and that would be about the last time you hear about it. So that's a lot of pedophile presidents, and you could say, well, you know, those are all Democrats, talking about Biden and Obama and Bill Clinton, and that's true, but what are the odds that somebody comes along and isn't one? I mean, you've got the book The Last President, written by Ingersoll Lockwood in the 1800s. And he wrote 3 books about a man named Don Trump, and there would be riots in New York City, and his son Barron's marvelous underground journeys, and he would be traveling to Russia and all this stuff, and how he'd be the last president. So if that's true, and this is all time travel, like I purport that it is, then the last president, his election would be up, or his tenure as presidency would be up in 2028, because he was elected in 24. So that gives us 2 years from now. Well, a little more than that. Almost 3 years, I guess, because January of 29 is when he would be out officially. But Agenda 2030 with Phil Schneider, I've talked about that on several videos. And I'm not saying that it has to literally line up and happen, like this big cataclysmic event where everybody just dies has to happen in the year 2030 or before. But if you look at what's going on with extraterrestrial reveal, you look at what's going on with the concealing of the Epstein files, you look at what's going on with them spraying our skies with chemtrails and aluminum and boron and strontium, and it gets in our plants, it gets in our bodies, and we can't really extract that. And you look at what happened with the pandemic, and everything's lining up for an end game event, and they've been working on it for a while. And Bill Gates of hell even came out and said, yeah, just wait till the next event, wait till the next pandemic. You thought coronavirus was bad, wait until the next one. That's going to be the one that takes everybody out. When is that going to happen? I don't know. But that's pretty much all I want to talk about right now on pedo presidents. If you're to ask me my opinion, I do think that that story with Sasha Riley is probably true. And like I said, if he is lying, he needs to face federal charges then. But let's move on to Donny Marshall. Who is Donny Marshall? And I don't have as much on him. It's been years since I had first run across Donny Marshall in my videos and stuff. And what I can tell you from what I recall on Donny Marshall, and this is the deep stuff that most people won't hold a candle to. Most people, it's just too wild for them to believe, and I can understand that because some of the things he was saying were really wild. But in this day and age, if you have an open mind and you see what's going on, there comes a point where you just stop questioning things and you start saying, what if it's all really true? And what he was saying was that he was forced to sing songs to please the elites, and so many of the famous people were down there. I don't know exactly where. I don't know what base we're talking about or what underground tunnel or what D-U-M-B, but he was forced to sing to please them. And it was basically, how did he explain it? So it was, and the reason I believe it is because it lines up with a lot of what has been talked about with MK Ultra mind control before people really knew that it was going on. Now people are waking up. They see the Montauk Project, and how Stranger Things, that show, is based off the Montauk Project, and that is literally MK Ultra mind control, where you're getting down to the psychic experiments with the Montauk boys being strapped up to a chair in a hive mind and stuff like that, and how they were abducted from Long Island, New York, and it spread to other cities, according to Al Bielek, across the United States. So it wasn't just there, it was everywhere, much to the chagrin and the knowledge of the human populace. But Donny Marshall was coming out and saying that their consciences were being taken, including his, and when they went to sleep. So it's kind of like a Freddy Krueger kind of thing. Don't go to sleep because we're going to come and we're going to steal your conscience, and somehow your soul was being transported to another location, and you are forced to live out these experiences through your collective consciousness. And he said there were a lot of celebrities that were down there, and specifically I remember him talking about, oh my gosh, my memory can't be this bad. Paul Walker, the guy that was in Fast and Furious that died in the supposed car crash, Paul Walker. He said he was down there, and all these people, and he said it was very evil and very sick and very satanic, and he said that Paul Walker was one of them. They were forcing to basically do these things to please the audiences and stuff, and they would just kill them over and over and murder them if they weren't performing up to par. And Donny Marshall was able to appease them because he said a lot of the songs that come out now that the celebrities do, like your Hollywood Satanists, he said a lot of these songs, a majority of them actually were created by him when he was forced to do this in front of them, and they would steal his work and they would give it to all these Hollywood celebrities, and they would come out and make all these songs. And specifically, I can't remember. He had concrete, solid examples, but we're talking, I've seen this like 7 years ago. I can't remember exactly what songs it was, but it was a lot of them. And he would even sing the lyrics and the verses and everything, and he claimed that he's the one that came up with them, and maybe he was. I mean, when it comes to our satanic music industry, there's nothing that surprises me anymore. I mean, anything's on the table. If this is just somebody trying to make money on a vulnerable and easy situation, well, so be it, I guess. But I've got a pretty open mind, and I'm not discounting it. So there's a lot more to the Donny Marshall story than just that, though. He talks about the Vril. What's the Vril? Well, for you guys, I don't know who watched The X-Files growing up like I did from 1993, and then they had their reboot in 2018. But the Vril, well, The X-Files would have the UF. It was basically extraterrestrial stuff, and they talked about this, but they called it something a little different. They called it black oil. In some episodes, it was called black goo, and it would be forcefully led to be inserted into the eyes of people. Now, for a show that's supposed to be science fiction, which everybody believed it was science fiction at the time, what are the odds that you've got this extraterrestrial black oil or goo, it's black, and it's going in people's eyes? Well, Donny Marshall came out and talks about the Vril, V-R-I-L, and he says the Eye of Horus tattoo that you see a lot of people get on their biceps and their arms, he laughs about it. He says, you guys have no idea what you're putting on your bodies. He said that the Eye of Horus is actually, it's like this, kind of like a big grub or a worm creature. He calls them worms. The Vril, and it has this big proboscis at the end of it. So if you were to play Pokemon, envision, what's that one Pokemon with, it looks like a scarab beetle, and it's got the horn sticking out of its head, and it's cobalt blue. It's not like a beetle, it's like a worm, but it's got a proboscis, and that proboscis is what reminds me of that. But he said in the Eye of Horus tattoos in ancient Egypt that it was a lot of the reptilian stuff. Actual reptilians were using the Vril to take over people. And the black eyes, or the panda eyes, you guys have heard about panda eyes, where one of the eyes is black, and then you get these Hollywood celebrities doing their advertisements by putting, I'm not going to do it, but they'll make the 666 with their fingers and put it over their eye. And that's all what that symbolizes. It's the Eye of Horus. And you get the Illuminati triangle on the back of the dollar bill with the all-seeing eye over the pyramid, and they keep drawing attention to the eye. Well, think about it, though. So on the back of your dollar bill, it's a pyramid, right? It's a pyramid. Inuit, Septus, I can't remember what it says, but it's the New World Order on the back of your money, because they know you can't get away from it. You need money to live. And it's got the all-seeing eye over it. Well, the Eye of Horus is talking about the Vril going into the eyes of the hosts, and when that worm with the proboscis comes out, it infects the host. It kills them. They're dead. And they're completely kept alive by this host, this parasitic extraterrestrial host called a Vril, used by the reptilians. And it's basically, it mind controls them. And the X-Files talked about stuff like that. It was just called a different name. It was called black oil, or it was called black goo. But they even talked about extraterrestrial viruses being unleashed in the permafrost out in Antarctica or in the North Pole and stuff like that. And the movies where Mulder goes under Antarctica and finds the hidden bases where Scully is being trapped in the vat of embryonic liquid as they are trying to merge her with an extraterrestrial and have her give birth to an extraterrestrial species. And that was in the movie Fight the Future, I believe. It came out in 1997. But there's a lot that the X-Files try to tell us, and it was more science truth than it was science fiction. I keep saying this. Another show, movies, is coming out Thanksgiving and Christmas Day, is The Chronicles of Narnia, the Magician's Nephew, and they dropped a lot of truth bombs too. I'll not dive into that one on this video so much. I'll wait on that one again. I talked a little bit the last live stream I did, but there's so much truth that C.S. Lewis wrote in those children's fables that were based off of Christian lore, that if we just open our eyes up to it, we'd be like, wait a minute, we've been lied to our whole lives. So that's pretty much all I want to say about Donny Marshall at the moment. I'd have to do a deep dive. I don't have a lot of time right now. And then pedophile presidents. Check out Allie Carter's story. They did something yesterday trying to get cities to march in justice for the children who have been victims of human trafficking and the satanic occult ritual murder sacrifices that they talk about, and it's a real thing. Her mom, Shelley Carter, her adoptive mother from Tennessee, she talks about all this stuff. So if we can just open our eyes to it and see what's going on and be like, yeah, we know this evil's going on. What are we doing about it? How are we stopping it? Are we letting Sean Combs get away with just one charge and walking free in 4 years? I mean, yeah, he'll be under 5 years of supervised release, but so what? So what, man? This is, I'm not saying he's the head of the snake, because there's always somebody above them, but he is the personification of evil. And there's nothing that you can trust in our Hollywood music industry now. It's all compromised. It's all worshiping Satan outright. You're seeing bulls marching, big mechanical bulls marching with throngs of people when they're opening ceremonies for these things and concerts and Olympic Games. And you're seeing guys like Sam Smith dressing up in devil costumes. And I know what people are saying. They're like, oh, well, any attention is good attention for them. They just want eyes on them. No, there's more to it. There's a reason for what they do. And it's because the whole industry is compromised. So, somebody just commented and said, Trump partied with Diddy. Yeah, well, we've seen a Trump partying with Epstein. There's a video of that. And you can see them like bumping their heads back and forth and talking about women and stuff. And you can see it on the video, and you can see things with Trump talking on video about his daughter Ivanka when she was 13, and talking about how if she wasn't his daughter, he'd do wild things to her. So, back then he was just more confident because he wasn't the president of the United States. At that time, he had no desire to run for it. They kept asking him, and he said no. He said, and I think we're starting to see why he was saying no back then. It's because he was compromised and he was doing things. And will it ever come to the forefront? My guess is probably not. A lot of what's been on the Epstein files was rushed out, heavily redacted, but they revealed a lot of victims, but they redacted the people who were guilty. Why would you do that? Why is our government not working for the people a little bit better? Now we've got the Iran war and this guy who was murdered. I keep saying his name is David Goldberg. I know that's not the right name, and if you guys get more time than me, please try to research that. Actually, I have it somewhere. It's in my saved videos. I will find it. I told you I would do that last time, and I forgot. I'm just so busy. But that guy was killed because he said when the Iran war starts, they're going to have sweeping power outages, and they'll blame that on Iran. And then they're going to take out the major dissidents, the people who are talking about all this stuff. We're all blacklisted. The people who lead the way and expose all this stuff, like me, and who knows how many other people. But they'll come under the darkness of night, guns drawn, probably FEMA agents saying, hey, you have no choice, let's go to the live work play centers. And everybody wants to say it's a conspiracy theory until stuff like that happens. It happened in Nazi Germany. It could happen again. So but yeah, I appreciate you guys who have tuned in. Thank you. And that's pretty much all I got. I'll try to come out. I told you I'd come out with some extraterrestrial videos, and I will. Lots of stuff coming out. That stuff's not dying. Pete Hegseth is supposed to be reporting, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth is supposed to be reporting on aliens and releasing all that stuff that they have. Now, how much will it be? Probably not much. I doubt it'll be that much. It never is. It's always redacted form. They could have come out about this stuff a long time ago. John Fitzgerald Kennedy tried to, and that's part of the reason they murdered him. So, all right, guys, I appreciate you spending your time with me today. I know you're probably just as busy as I am, but I encourage you to try to better your lives any way you can. Let's all pull together and try to have a better life. We're all fighting the same fight. We're all at the bottom of the totem pole, but we're not always going to be there. So keep working hard, keep doing what you do, and if I can help you guys in any way, I will. I've got good news coming up in June, but I'm not going to ruin the video just yet. So it's coming. So, all right, that's all I got. Stay tuned for next live stream. Love you guys. Appreciate you. Continue to stick it out here. We'll try to get you the truth as much as I can. And until next time, Godspeed.